This week, Bryce and I are talking about quiet quitting. You may have heard of it, you might not, but really it's just a new name for an old behavior. And it boils down to two questions that we ask ourselves each day. Are we willing to do the minimum work necessary to keep our jobs, or are we willing to go that extra mile? Tune in and listen, what we have lots to talk about today.
Welcome to The Thinking Leader, brought to you by Red Team Thinking. Bad leaders react, good leaders plan, and great leaders think. Each week, you'll get new ideas and insights from business executives, military experts, and innovative thought leaders to help you lead more effectively and better navigate your complex world. Now, here are your hosts, best-selling business author and top-rated leadership speaker, Bryce Hoffman, and former RAF Wing Commander and business agility coach, Marcus Dimbleby.
Welcome back to The Thinking Leader. Marcus, what are we going to talk about this week?
Hello, my friend. Nice to see you again. This week, I want to talk about something that's doing the rounds on LinkedIn, in the press, social media, something called quiet quitting. Have you heard of this?
Quiet quitting. Yeah,
Quiet
I have.
quitting. Yeah, I've been doing a bit of research, and really, this is just a new name for an old behavior.
Yes, I was going to say,
you know,
I can think of a lot of people I've known who've quiet quitted over the years.
Absolutely.
Some of them never started.
This is true. We'll get to those shortly. But it boils down to this, really. You think about it. Every employee, every workday makes a decision. And it boils down to this, am I willing to do the minimum work necessary to keep my job? Or am I willing to put that little bit more in, that extra effort, to go that extra mile to maybe get that promotion or get that next step on the ladder? And I think this has now really come to the forefront recently, people with the pandemic, people working from home, their sense of trust in the organizations they're working with. And we spoke about this before, about how leadership not showing this trust of their people, how leadership often follow in agendas for tokenism and these fake D&I agendas that we talked about, rather than focusing on their people for the right reasons. It's causing people to become disenfranchised, disengaged, and hence quietly quit. What do you think of that?
It's really interesting. You're right. It comes down to trust. It comes down to employee engagement. It comes down to feeling like you're contributing, I think. I think most people want to make a positive difference. Most people don't want to just come to work, get a paycheck, and go home. I mean, there are people like that. But I think particularly in the professions, people want to feel like they're making a positive contribution, but oftentimes they're not able to. And that's amplified. I want to go back to something you said about D&I. It gets worse when you pay lip service to something and don't do it. So when and we've talked about this before, and this is something that Ellie Cloak, the head of our diversity and inclusion practice, talks about, is when you're in a situation where you're getting a job to increase the diversity of the organization you're in, and then nobody listens to you, nobody wants to hear what you have to say, you're made to sit in the corner essentially, then that's like more frustrating than having not got the job in the first place.
Yeah, very much so.
And I think there's a lot that goes on like that today, is people feel like, they get told, we want to hear from everybody, and then they don't listen to anybody. We want diversity in our organization, but then the only people who get to make decisions are people who look like us.
Yeah, echo chambers.
Things like that. Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, I think over the course of the pandemic, as you said, this has always been a thing.
Yeah.
But over the course of the pandemic, people have had a chance to pause and to reflect. And I think a lot of people are just, like, you know what? I'm not doing this anymore. And if this is what it's going to be, I'm just going to do the minimum effort.
Yeah, because it boils down to that, what I used to call discretionary effort. We've all got our job.
Oh, I love that.
You all get your, terms of reference or your roles and responsibilities in whatever job you have. These are the things you are to do to get paid.
Right.
And, and you go, as long as I do that. And I remember working with guys and gals and be like, hey, I've done my stuff, I'm off. and they'd be out the door at 5 o'clock every day. Hey, and if anybody ever called
Clock
out,
watchers.
yeah. But if anybody gave them some banter that, hey, I've done my work. Is all my work done? Yes. I can't fault you. You've done that. But then obviously then they don't get promoted because they're not seen to be doing that extra mile. They're not providing discretionary effort, what I call it.
Right.
And I think that's often a thing that has energized and carried a lot of organizations, because when there was that competitive sort of environment where you had to be seen to be doing that to get on, that seems to have gone. As you said, this quiet quitting, tie that in with a great resignation, which isn't actually a resignation, it's a migration, because people now have this opportunity to move to organizations that, as you talked about, embrace this diversity of thought, embrace innovation and engagement, and want people to do that and then enable it. That's the key thing. As you said, everybody talks about it. Everybody, we want you to engage, we want you to be innovative, but then they actually don't enable it. And if you don't enable it, you can expect your people to walk out the door pretty quickly, I think.
There's so much to unpack there, Marcus, because, so on the one hand, you have the fact that if you don't have healthy competition in an organization, if you don't have people kind of collegially striving to better the organization and to race against each other to do more, you're never going to have a great organization. And when I was a journalist in Detroit, there was something that really fascinated me. Detroit's right on the border of Canada and the United States. So it's literally on a river that separates the US from Canada. And I was always surprised because there were always several Canadian reporters in all the newsrooms I worked in Detroit. And I sat next to this one woman who was from Canada for a few years. And after we got to know each other, I said to her, she was complaining about, after 9/11, going over the bridge between the US and Canada. Sometimes it take her an hour, 2 hours, sometimes you get a strip search, and stuff like this. I said, I mean, are there no newspapers in Canada? Like, why come over the border? Why go through this hassle every day to work in the United States? Is the pay that much better? And she said, no. But she said, here's the thing about Canada. She said, everybody is a C player, because there's no incentive to be anything other than a C player. You can't be fired as long as you do your job. And everybody knows it. And so as a result, everybody, is a term that we used to use in the newspapers that I think other people may be familiar with as well, phoning it in. He's just phoning it in, she's just phoning it in. In other words, you're not showing up, you're just phoning it in. Anyway, she said, at every newsroom she'd worked at in Canada, most people are just phoning in because you're not going to get significantly more compensated, recognized, whatever, by going that extra mile. And so she said, I wanted to work in an environment where there's healthy competition amongst the reporters, to see who can break the most stories, who can have the most front pages, things like that, because in our culture that we had in the newsroom there, that's how you got promoted. That's how you got bonuses. That's how you got recognized. And so you lose that if you don't have that. And people, just think about the story I just shared. This was 15 years ago, but she was migrating, literally, as you said. She'd been fed up with the newsroom she'd worked in because there wasn't that fire. There wasn't a reason to bring your A game. And so she left and she came to a place where there was. We had where I worked was a crucible. The Detroit News was fiercely competitive internally and externally. And you were recognized for your hard work. But, it's that, and if organizations, not just companies, government organizations too, one of the reasons why people say, government organizations are not innovative is because a lot of government organizations, because they don't have the kind of private sector incentives, they don't reward people for being innovative. Yeah. They reward people for going along and getting along.
And when you do that, you get mediocrity. So that becomes the norm. You see the sheep-like passivity that we spoke about previously, and therefore you wonder why your organization starts to go down rather than up. And I think that where people demand hard work, it's a sort of standard expectation, especially in the private sector, that we talk about the cosh of speed, we talk about increased productivity, and these are needed and often essential in most organizations to stay ahead. If you're stationary, you're going to die in this VUCA world that we live in. So you've got to be moving at pace. But again, if you're moving at breakneck speed, it's dangerous. If you're moving without the capability of your people. But if you're moving with an expectation that that is the expectation of your people, but you haven't broken what I call the other half of the deal, in that it's a two-way street. If I'm working for you, Bryce, and you want me to work hard and fast and do the things you want me to do, okay, I'll do that. But where's the valued piece that I'm going to feel from this? What's the quid pro quo here? Not, I might get promotion, and it's not about that anymore for people. I don't sense that people are just doing these things for promotion. I really do believe that people want to get up in the morning, come to work full of energy, innovation, excitement, and engagement, and do the best they can for their organization. But I don't think we've got leaders that deserve that anymore in the round. I think people are seeing that group of people close and become more narrow, and it's not their fault. And I've discussed with, and we mentioned it with Jose, we are over promoting people. We are promoting often the wrong people and making them leaders of people without the expertise and experience. And if you're a leader out there, ask how much effort are you putting into your actual people from a values perspective, rather than a demanding the work to be done perspective. That's fine. That's a necessary evil. It's life and it's work. But how much time are you investing individually with those people to form relationships, to develop understanding and clarity of each other? And then when they do that, they're going to work harder for you. They're going to work better. They're going to work more engaged, because life's about relationships. And if you're not fostering those as a leader, then I don't really understand how you can expect people to do what you want them to do, especially in this day and age with everything else going on, without expecting the blowback from that, which we're now starting to see.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it starts, the first element of that is leading by example. If you want your people to give 110% every day, you've got to give 120%. And it's a powerful thing. The best editor I ever had when I was a newspaper reporter, shout out to Mark Truby. He hired me at the Detroit News, and he demanded the world every day of his team. And I have never spent so many days working till 10, 11 o'clock at night, night after night. Mm-hmm. But he was there till 1 or 2 in the morning every night. So it was really hard to get too upset when he'd say, hey, I need you to, let's stay and try to get one more source on this. Let's see if we can't find this out. Because he wasn't calling from his car phone on the way home saying, hey, I need you to finish it.
I expect you to do it, not me.
Right. Yeah. And, and that drives you. I mean, it's like, I don't want to be the guy that walks out with the story unfinished at 10 o'clock at night and leave him there, and if he really wanted to guilt trip me, that's what he'd do. He's like, oh, if you're going to go home, I guess I'll stay here.
You go.
The fucking story.
I'll write the best bits.
It's like, and then of course, Now, some people won't do that. There was a guy at the paper at the time, older guy. Every time they hired a new reporter, he would come over to their desk and say, this is a union shop, and they can't make you work if you don't want to, they can't make you work a minute past your quitting time. And you only have to do one story a day, no matter what's going on. And he'd give this whole demoralizing talk to the newbie the first day. And he was a friggin' joke. Nobody respected him. He never broke news. He never won awards, and he just sit in his corner. And every time he saw other people working hard, he'd be like, I don't know why you guys are still here. You should be going home, and stuff. Yeah. And so it's not a guarantee, but if you have good people on your team and you lead by example, you will make them better. This editor I was talking about, he made me the best reporter I could ever be.
100%. Ex-military days, that's getting down in the trenches with the troops. The officers who sit at the back with their shiny white shirts and never get the boots dirty, weren't respected, were invariably not very good. But the guys who you look left and right and see them in there, getting their hands dirty, mucking in with people, leading by example, as you say. And I think what that boils down to, we talked about trust. And what you've got to do really is, as a leader, as a young leader, as an old leader, whatever you're doing, if you're leading people, you've got to enable and build trust. And it doesn't just come by default with your role or position. Really, I think you've got to look sort of 3 things with here. You've got to have those positive relationships. How you do that is down to you, but you've just given a great example. Get down in the trenches, roll your sleeves up, go and work with them. Walk through the shop floor in the morning, go to the Gemba where the work's happening, and just talk to people, find out about what they're up to in their personal lives as well as professional. One, get those relationships built and make them positive and consistent. The second thing is consistency. If you're a leader, deliver on what you promise. People look at you, and if you're changing your tack each week, consistently changing, the paradox there, people are going to think, hang on a minute, they don't know where they're at. They're struggling to understand what's going on. Things do change. We know this. We're in a VUCA complex world, but let them know why. Explain, hey guys, we were going this way last week. The boss has just come in. This has happened in the market, or the competition's doing this. We have to pivot. That's okay. They have understanding and clarity of why you do that. But if you're inconsistent as a leader, that just sows doubt into the mind of your people. And then look at the third one for me is capability. And we talk about this as part of our 3 C's. It's this expertise. Are you an expert? When you open your mouth, do people listen because it's consistently quality stuff that's coming out because you know your onions? And likewise, as individuals, am I capable of doing what's been asked of me? And you see so often people saying that this is the opposite. We get the yes men. It's not the quiet quitter. It's yes, I'll do that. I'll do that. And they're not capable of doing it, but off they go and do it, and they make a complete hash of it, and then someone else has got to pick up the mess because they rushed off and weren't capable. So build those positive relationships, have that consistency of behavior, and have the capability and expertise. If you provide these 3 things consistently as a leader, then I think your trust with your individuals is going to really start to grow and mature over time. And you'll start to trust them more. As I said earlier, this is a 2-way street. It's not a matter of you must trust me, I'm the leader. How about you trust the people who work for you? Because when you trust people, when I feel trusted, how well do I work? Off the scale. When someone's always pulling you back or questioning everything you do, you're like, hang on a minute, do you not trust me? You kick down a gear rather than kick it up. And that's a massive difference that we're seeing.
It's great advice, Marcus. Let's take a break here. When we come back, I want to talk about this 2-way street concept and being not just a good leader. You give great advice to being a good leader. Let's talk about what it means to be a good follower.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Hey, folks, Bryce here. If you're listening to this and you're liking what you're hearing and you're wondering, am I a red team thinker? We have an easy way for you to find out. Just go to the show notes, click on the link there to our free assessment to find out if you are a red team thinker and what you can do to think more effectively, to lead more effectively, and to make better decisions faster in your complex world. Like I said, the link is in the show notes, or you can simply go to our website, redteamthinking.com. Check it out. I can't wait to see how you score. Welcome back. So, Marcus, we spent the first half of the show talking about what leaders owe to those who work for them and how people are quietly quitting or greatly resigning if they don't have good leadership. But it's a 2-way street, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
And the other side of that street is when you have good leadership, when you have leaders who are trying to be thoughtful, when you have leaders who are listening, you owe it to them to try to meet them, at least halfway, if not more so, and try to be part of the solution as well. And this is something I've been thinking about a lot in the past week, because we've been talking, you and I, on the show for months about the return to work and what a complex problem that is for a lot of organizations, and how bad leaders, bad companies are just kind of approaching this in a dictatorial and heavy-handed way without thinking about the future of work and listening to their employees. But I was really disappointed to see this week that Apple, which has been very thoughtful about return to work, has spent a lot of time talking with its employees about what the future of work looks like, and has come up with what I think is a pretty reasonable plan of employees have to be in the office Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then pick one other day that they're in the office with just their teams, has had a huge backlash.
Really?
From employees who are refusing to go along with the new program, are
really?
refusing to return to work. Yeah.
It's getting a bit precious now, isn't it?
There's been a huge petition drive, but there's also been walkouts apparently this week in Apple employees saying that, or not walkouts, I guess, not showing ups, saying we're not coming back. And I think that points to the fact that when you're work for an organization, you got to be part of the solution too. And just digging your heels in and say, no, I'm not coming back to the office ever. It's not being part of the solution.
That's part of society's problem today, though, isn't it? And we spoke about this with Mick Paisley, and you just said it then. You work for an organization. Let's take a reality check today. Let's take the pill. We get paid by organizations that we work for. They're not there for our benefit. They are there as a business, as an organization, and we work for them to create an output, productivity. And hopefully we do that in a nice environment with good fun people, etc. But it's going a little bit extreme now, isn't it? I think it's this post-COVID again. Hey, we could do everything at home, but we all know that social interaction is how we form, as humans, the best, how we innovate the best. And yeah, we're not saying you do it all the time, but there's a happy medium. And it's starting to become very dictatorial by certain groups who think that they're calling the shots in organizations. And if that's what they think, then you play with someone like Apple, you're going to come to a stick end, because there are people who will take your jobs and happily go and work at Apple on 2 or 3 days a week. I'm quite sure.
Right. And that's the thing is what it really, it's not just the return to work thing. We see this in other organizations where companies try to think outside the box, organizations try to think outside the box, and sometimes the biggest pushback comes from inside the organization. We see this a lot in our work with different government agencies. A lot of the pushback, you and I were just talking about this before the show, a lot of the pushback, a lot of the thing that prevents governments from innovating and moving forward is the entrenched bureaucracy that just wants to keep things exactly as it is.
Correct.
It's easier to just keep doing what we're doing on autopilot than to think.
Correct. And I think Apple's done the right thing, because, as you said, we've seen this very much. You're all coming back to work, Goldman Sachs style. We've had the others where, hey, guys, do whatever you like. Don't come back to work, everyone will close the office down. And then you get the old 60-40, hey, just come back 3 days a week whenever. That doesn't work. And I've been working with one company where they've mandated 60-40, but they haven't mandated what days. So it actually makes the problem worse, because people come in whenever they like, and almost you're creating that sort of call center mentality, because you go in the office, half the team are in, half the team are at home. So you've got a mixed Zoom Teams type call scenario. The meeting rooms haven't been upgraded enough to do quality hybrid working. And you get people frustrated, where if you just say, right, everybody come in on day X, day Y, you get that cohesive group. You don't get FOMO, the old fear of missing out, because you know that you're in the office together. And then you get that third fun day to do what you want on. But I really don't see what the issue is with this. I really don't.
Right. And if you look at what they've done, to your point, it seems like they put a lot of thought into this. Think about this. Tuesday and Thursday brackets the week.
Yeah.
It means that you're not ever going 5 days without, being in the office. Mm-hmm. And so you're keeping people connected. And then talk about building team cohesion and team spirit is letting each team then pick when are they going to work together as just a team.
Yeah.
And they don't have to be there for the rest of the organization, but as a team 1 day a week. There's a lot of goodness, a lot of good thought, it seems to me, in that plan.
There is.
And I think the people who are pushing back on it, from what I can read and what I can see on the news, are not pushing back on it with an argument about here's what's wrong with the plan. They're pushing back on it with, we like working from home and we've been doing it for 2 years and we want to keep doing it.
Do you know what they're pushing back on? Here's what I'm entitled to in my own mind. That's what it is. I'd love to hear comments from anybody who disagrees with this or just whatever people think of this. Please comment, below when we get this up online. I think it's a fascinating subject, and I really do think it's like everything. There's too much polarization going on here. People are going left and right of arc rather than just thinking we're all in this together. I'm an organization. I'm an employee within that organization. I have a quid pro quo agreement with that organization, my contract, and you and I have that to the business, and we work to that, and we hold ourselves accountable to that. If you just think you're showing up because it suits you, there's never going to be a thing that suits you unless you work on your own, doing your own thing with no one else. And that's fine. If you want to do that, leave and go and set up your own business working in isolation. But if you're working in an organization, the sort of 80% solution is good enough. And if you don't like that, then you're not a team player. And if everybody works together, you can make that solution much more effective. And as you said, I think that engagement of the team coming together to decide that third day is a real powerful enabler.
Right. And I think that you're right that that entitlement is part of the problem. The other thing I think is part of the problem that's also societal is we've got this very cynical attitude that's kind of become a very powerful stream, at least in the West, of social thought that basically expects totally unrealistically things to change overnight.
Yeah.
And I'll give another Apple example that came out, after the new iPhone was announced at the beginning of September. I thought this was an amazing thing. Apple announced that they're shifting production of at least part of the iPhone output to India in an effort to start extricating themselves from China, which I think is a great thing on a lot of levels. And yet you got people already jumping on saying, yeah, but they're not moving all production out of China. Like, it's like,
yeah, damned if you do. That's the problem,
right.
Isn't it? Everybody's looking to jump on the bandwagon of Twitterism, the Twatterati. They want to be on there. Oh, I've got to pick fault. Nobody stops to look anymore at the positives, at what people are trying to achieve, rather than, oh, you could have done that yesterday. But we didn't. But we're looking to do things differently. And if we walk around with this, trying to throw a spear at everything, then it's not going to be effective going forward as a societal group. And I think that's the problem, as you said, societal. It's so, and it's a Western thing. It's so easy now to pick fault. It's a human default in the West, I think, to pick fault on things. It's all Einstein, isn't it?
Right.
1 times 1, 2 times 2, 9 times 9 is 80. And he goes, ta-da! And they go, you stupid old man, you got that wrong. He's like, what? 9 times 9 is 81. He goes, oh yeah, silly me. But I got all the rest right. And he turns and look, we are all focused on the one thing people get wrong, isn't it?
Right.
And you made that one error and everyone keeps remembering it. They forget all the great things that you do. And if you become like that as a society, it becomes quite toxic. And therefore these great organizations that try and do the right thing even then get slammed for doing it. And then they start to think, well, why bother? What's the purpose and benefit?
I mean, there has got to be so much financial cost, so much organizational friction, so much time investment at Apple in order to start shifting production of the iPhone out of China. This is one of the best-selling consumer devices in the world. It's been produced in China since day one, I think. And this is a Herculean effort to start to shift production out of China.
But they're doing it because it's the right thing to do.
It's not going to happen overnight. Yeah. And instead of people saying, wow, why aren't more organizations doing what Apple's doing and starting to shift production out of China? When you do have some people doing that, you do have like a lot of people, like you say, that in social media makes it worse. People just say, why aren't they doing it all?
Of course they do. That's what we said, though. Social media allows the masses, who aren't actually a massed force at all, but they just appear to be because of the voice of social media. And it's a dangerous thing. It really is, because it has a massive impact. And people tend to jump on the bandwagon with it rather than really doing that objective, critical thinking about what they're seeing and what they're hearing and the value of doing that. Likewise, all those employees at Apple, straight away, oh, no, you can't make us go back to work in these days. Well, yes, we can. And if you don't like it, there's the door. Resignations accepted on Monday morning, send them to HR, thanks for your time. It's a blunt, brutal fact of life and employment. And if people don't like it, then I think they're looking and barking at the wrong tree. Really do.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's the thing. Going back to what we said, it's a two-way street. Leaders need to trust their employees, those who work for them, and they need to enable them and help them to be successful and to challenge them in a constructive way. And people need to challenge their leaders in a constructive way too. Yeah. But if you're an old-fashioned command and control, nobody can tell me what to do, I know everything leader, you're not going to be successful in your organization. It's not going to be successful. And if you're an employee who automatically rejects whatever the boss says and just approaches everything with a negative light, you're not going to make your organization successful, and you're not going to be successful either. You may not be fired. It's like this guy I told the story about before the break at the newsroom I worked at in Detroit. He retired. He never got fired because he did exactly the bare minimum that he was required to do. But what sort of life is
exactly? Yeah, nothing. There's no legacy. There's no remembrance of quality. You know. Hey, if that's what people want, fine. But don't be bitching and moaning along the way and dragging other people into that sort of toxic mindset. That's, I'm happy to leave anybody to be what they want to be, but don't impact others with your own negative perspectives, because it's very easy to do that. And people do tend to migrate towards that as well, which is unfortunate. And you get that amplified with social media. So there's the quiet quitting we kicked off with, but there's also this very loud verbal. Well, it's not quitting those. It's not loud quitting because they're talking a great game. But come down to it, I'd like to see the statistics. How many of those people whining and moaning about Big Bad Apple doing this actually resign?
Yeah. Interesting question.
Yeah.
Well, as you said, tell us what you think in the comments below.
Indeed.
Marcus, another great conversation.
Always, my friend.
We'll be back next week.
Look forward to it. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you for tuning in to The Thinking Leader. Check the show notes for more information about the topics covered in this episode. There, you'll also find a link to our free assessment. Click on it right now to find out if you are a Red Team thinker with a Red Team culture.